we're on page Yud Gimel, Amud Beis, 13b. And we mentioned a brisa here that from the word Vahayu, you're not allowed to read the Shema backwards. Rabbi Zutra said a statement about the difference between the first paragraph and the second paragraph. The first one needs kavana, the second one needs kriya, and which means you have to actually say the words. And Rabbi Yoshia said the opposite. First one needs kavana. Rabbi Yoshia said that the first one needs kriya and the second one needs kavana. And so we tried to figure out what that means. What are they specifically saying? Because both of the paragraphs of Shema, both of the first two paragraphs of Shema, both say kavana, alavavecha, or alavavchem, and they both say ledaber bam or v'dibarta bam. They both say you should say it and you should have kavana. So we explained that the second paragraph of the Shema, there's different ways of reading of translating. Number one, alavavchem could mean that the tefillin has to be towards the heart, and the ledaber bam is talking about divrei Torah. And therefore, there's reason to say that in the second paragraph of the Shema, maybe you don't need kavana, or maybe you don't need to say to say the words, and that was the difference of these two opinions. And then we mentioned the next Gemara, where it said that Shema Yisrael, until here you need kavana, and that was the halacha. We said Rava says this is the halacha, that the first pasuk is what you need kavana. And on this Gemara we said that if you lengthen the word echad, then Hashem lengthens your life. Ma'arichan la yamav u'shnoso. And Rav Acha Bar Yaakov mentioned it's the daled you have to lengthen. Rav Ashi said, don't make a chatof on the ches. What is a chatof? So Rashi translates it to mean that don't sound the ches out wrong, that you should sound, it's echad, not echid. It has a kametz, and it should be, you shouldn't put like a shava there. And what that means is that either just say the ches properly, or it means you should lengthen it a little, but not too much. And we're now up to the next line of the Gemara, where Reb Yirmiyah is sitting with Reb Chia in front of Reb Chia bar Abba, and Reb Yirmiyah made this long echad, and Reb Chia bar Abba told him off. He said, once you mamlech Hashem above and below in the four directions, you don't need any more. Maybe we said that yesterday, actually. I'm not sure if we read that inside, or I think we read that inside. So the question that we left off yesterday is, so how should you say the echad? If for practical purposes, what is the right way to say the Shema? And in Shul, you sometimes hear different people trying to fulfill this obligation. And so let's see what we find here in the code of law. So in the Torah writes v'tzarich laharich b'daled of echad. You have to lengthen the daled of echad, the amount of time that you could think in your heart that Hashem is alone, He's Yochid, he's singular, above, below, and the four ruchos of the four directions of the world. He mentioned some have a custom to move their head as they're thinking, above, below, and the four directions. However, some people don't, some opinions say that's not the question that, because you're really not supposed to make any movements of like twitching your eye to hint something. You're not allowed to make these type of movements. So maybe that also, you shouldn't be moving your head in these different directions. Now, the Rosh, who's the Torah's father, said that it's not a problem because you're not allowed to make these hints to people with your eyes, because that is against the opposite of kavana. But here, this is your kavana. This is part of your kavana. You're thinking about above, below, and the four directions. So therefore, it shouldn't be a problem. Then the Torah brings that the Yerushalmi says that the daled should sound like a daled and not like a resh. Echad and not echor. Acher sounds like another god, chas v'shalom. So you make sure that it sounds like a daled. And also, you have to be careful when you say the ches. You read it too fast. It doesn't sound like the word echad. And don't overdo the aleph, because if you sound the aleph too long, it sounds like a ichad, like Hashem is not one. Chas v'shalom. So we got all these rules. Then we have yesh mefarshim. Some explain that you should lengthen the ches a drop enough to think in your mind that Hashem is one in the heavens and in the earth, and the daled that you have in mind for the four directions. So, and they have a proof from Menachos that it says about the letter ches, it has it has like a bridge on top of it, which shows that Hashem is above and below, that he's in the heights of the world. He rules over everything, and therefore, you have that in mind when you say when you lengthen the ches a little. Okay, so this is the Torah, and then the Bach on the side over here mentions that when you say the daled, you should breathe a little longer, that from the exhale, enough to be able to think in your mind about these things. But make sure not to lengthen the actual daled. It'll sound like you're pronouncing the daled with a vowel under it, and it doesn't have a vowel. You ruin it if you overdo the daled. So that's the Bach. Now the Shulchan Aruch, the actual code of law from the Alter Rebbe, I think he makes it very clear that he brings down here in chapter 61, if you lengthen the daled of echad, your days and years are lengthened, but you should also not overdo lengthening. You shouldn't rush the ches, but you should lengthen it a little in order to be mamlech Hashem in the heavens and the earth, because the seven heavens and the earth equal 8. 7 plus 1 is 8, and that's the letter ches. And this is the hint of the bridge above the letter ches, that Hashem is chai berumay shalolam, which we just saw in the Torah. Hashem is living in the heights of the world. And in the daled, you should have in mind a little more. You should lengthen it more in order the amount of time that you should think that Hashem is one in the world, rules over the four directions. Now you don't have to lengthen it more than this amount. And that's what our Gemara seems to be saying. Reb Chia bar Abba told Reb Yirmiyah off, don't overdo it. Don't do it anymore. That's what it sounds like the Alter Rebbe is bringing from this Gemara. He says, you don't have to lengthen it any more than this measure. And some have a custom. He brings this custom about moving one's head, the up, down, into the four directions. Now, in the next paragraph, he says, make sure it sounds like a daled, not like a resh, but also make sure that you don't put a dot inside the daled and make it sound like it has, like it is a letter that has to be emphasized and put more oomph into it, because it doesn't have a dot. If a letter that has a Hebrew letter that has a dot in it, it means that it's supposed to be sounded stronger. And the Dalet does not have a dot in it. It has no dagesh. So rather you should make it sound good, which means, and he explains in a moment what that means. He says, for sure, it's not good, those that overdo it, and it sounds like there's a vowel under the Dalet. So what it means that you should lengthen the Dalet of Echad, they don't mean that you lengthen the actual letter Dalet, because it doesn't have a vowel under it. Rather, you should lengthen your thought before you start the next verse of Baruch Shem. So you're thinking about being Mamlech Hashem, coronating Hashem over the four directions when you say the Dalet, and you continue thinking about that until you completely think about that, process it, and then you start the Baruch Shem. So that is what it means to lengthen it. It means in your thought, after you actually say the Dalet, you're not supposed to do the Echad and overdo it. You're supposed to just say Echad, and you're supposed to think and continue thinking about the thought of the Dalet. So that's just a little clarity on the Shema and what it means here to lengthen the Echad. Now the Mission of Brewer doesn't really overdo it. Let's see. The Mission of Brewer seems to just.
Rob, I had a question.
Just 1 second. Let me just read you the Mission of Brewer before you ask your question. He does. The Shulchan Aruch says emphasize the Dalet shouldn't be a resh. You shouldn't rush the ches of the aleph. So it has all these. It said mentions about you have to make the ches a little longer to be mamlech Hashem, to coronate Hashem, the heavens and the earth, and that's what the roof of the ches is supposed to emphasize, that Hashem is above everything. And you lengthen the Dalet, the amount of time to think that Hashem is one in the heavens, in the world, and rules over the four directions. Don't lengthen it more than this. Again, that's what our Gemara was mentioning. And some have it custom to move their head around. And then the Mishnah Brewer just says that don't overdo the Dalet, because it'll sound like the Dalet has a vowel under it. So he says, similar to what the Alter Rebbe says, rather you should just make it sound, say it well. In other words, it shouldn't be like a resh. It should be clear. It should be sounded clearly. Now, what does he say before? That the Magen Avraham writes in the name B'Shem. I don't know who the Mem Aleph is. There's a source here, Mem Ayin. Minchas Ani, probably. That you should lengthen the ches. The ches should be lengthened 1/3, and the Dalet should be 2/3. So that's an interesting point that he adds. which means you lengthen the ches a little and you lengthen the dalet a little more. And some say not to lengthen the ches at all, only have in mind everything in the dalet, and he says the gra holds that way. So what comes out is that even if you're going to lengthen the letter a drop, you got to be careful the dalet that you don't overdo the dalet, because the dalet does not have a vowel under it, and therefore you shouldn't be lengthening the dalet. The Alter Rebbe in his Shulchan Aruch says clearly it's all about the kavana. And the Piskei Teshuvos here, let's see, the Piskei Teshuvos, which is the latest sefer on, clarifying Shulchan Aruch, where he brings down, he says, it doesn't mean you should make the dalet longer, because if you do, you'll end up changing the meaning of the dalet. It'll sound like day or doi, echad doi, echad day. It'll sound wrong. And therefore, he says it means immediately after you finish saying it, you should lengthen your thought about it on what the kavana is. And it also the ches, if you lengthen the ches too long, it'll sound like you're adding a letter, aleph, echad, echad. Sounds like you're adding a letter aleph in between the echad. So you got to be careful not to overdo it. I know it sounds cool and shul if everyone stares at you when you make the extra unusual echad and people think you're a big scholar, but they're actually not fulfilling the mitzvah properly. Now he says it's no problem as long as right afterwards you have in mind the kavana. And he brings the reason, he says, because toich kadei dibur is like dibur. If you do it within a small, short amount of time, it's considered like you're saying it still. And so that's basically the way to do the Shema. Just do it normal. Have in mind while you're saying it, and after you're saying it, about the 7 heavens, 1 earth, and the 4 directions of the earth. Hashem is in charge of everything, and not to lengthen the aleph also, because it will sound like ichad instead of echad. And about moving one's head, that's an interesting custom. I did see somewhere where it mentions make sure not to make it like a cross. When a person moves their head, if they want to move their head, they should make sure they're not doing like the other religions and go straight back and forth and then go make it like a cross. Instead, go from east to north to west to south. So this way it's not like a cross. And then he does bring a Sephardic custom, tradition, that a person should think of the word when he says the Shema. You should think of the Shema as if it's written in the Torah with the Hebrew letters, with exactly the way it's written in the Torah, the big ayin and the big daled, and it's written in the Hebrew with the calligraphy, the Torah calligraphy. And this is brought down in Sephardic sources, that you should think of each letter of the verse, it should be opposite your eyes, and the way Hashem's name is spelled out, and it'll help you have kavana for the rest of the whole davening. So that's an interesting segula. I haven't heard it in the Ashkenazic world, but it's brought down in Sephardic sources, Kaf HaChaim, and so on. Okay, now someone had a question. I didn't see who it was. Robert, was it you?
It was David, I think.
Oh, David.
Yeah.
David,
And
yeah.
then I'd like to go after him, okay?
Okay.
Go ahead, David, take it away.
Thank you. So my question, I don't know if this is a stupid question, but Shema is obviously the central prayer of all of davening. Look, you have a whole Gemara and all these different details in the pronunciation, but we see that in the ladder, so to speak, of our davening, it's building up, building up, building up. And Shema, it doesn't seem to be the central part. It seems to be a build up towards Shemon Esrei, even though Shemon Esrei might not have been totally invented by the time, it would be in the early times of the Gemara. But my point is, like, the Shemon Esrei is a man-made prayer, and that's considered to be the climax, not Shema. Otherwise, why wouldn't we have Shemon Esrei first and then the Shema afterwards as the climax, and then go from there till the davening that's after that, to the end of the davening? So you follow my question?
So you're wondering, why isn't the Shema the climax? Why is the Shemona Esrei the climax?
Right.
And you're asking that here because we're talking about the Shema and how to pronounce it. And it sounds like how important the Shema is. It sounds like this is the foundation of our religion, and it is. Why shouldn't it be the climax? That's a very interesting question. I guess that there's two parts to the prayer. One is our connection to Hashem, and the other is requesting our needs. So if the main part of the Shema is just to acknowledge Hashem, maybe the way what you're saying maybe would be more correct. But because Shema, because the prayer encompasses also the obligation for us to ask Hashem for our needs, so it doesn't end there at acknowledging Hashem as King, but it really is, a big part of the prayer is to acknowledge that Hashem is the one who gives us everything, and we have to ask Him for everything. And so I think that would be maybe a reason why Shemona Esrei would get more, respect, so to speak. Would be considered the climax. Maybe just a thought of it. There's something you could definitely look into. So if you want to do research and come back tomorrow with some more information, that would be great. I'm just throwing a little thought there. Sound okay, David? Okay, I don't know. Robert.
Yes, I'm sorry, my button wasn't working. Sorry. Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
Rabbi,
okay, Robert. Yes.
Rob. Okay, I have a couple of thoughts. In any case, since there's so much here for me to absorb because I've not read it or understood all of the nuances of the Shema and everything else. So I have two questions. When I go to shul, it says in the text here that if you mentally say the Shema, that's acceptable. But then again, it's the whole idea of you have to articulate the Shema. But it's like when I say the Shema in my mind, I'm using my inner voice, if that means anything, and my lips are repeating the prayer without making any noise, without it being, audible. So the question is, how, again, I guess the question is, it's sort of a progression because everybody in shul says the Shema verbally, all right? Or there's times in crisis, let's say, that you say the Shema. And so I just wanted to put that within sort of the continuum of consciousness in regards to saying the Shema and it's being a valid prayer that's recognized. Does that make sense?
It's very important what you bring up. Very, very important point that you bring up. And you're bringing up two things. Number one is the Gemara mentioned an argument about reciting it or just having in mind. And what's important to emphasize here is just because the Gemara mentions these opinions, it's not the final verdict. It's not the final law. So even though there is an opinion here that says the first paragraph of the Shema, you could get away with just knowing and understanding and not actually reading, that is not the halacha. You do need to actually read it. We'll also be discussing this in a few moments in the next Gemara as well, where it does give an implication that maybe you don't have to say, only certain parts of the Shema, But the point is that don't get any, we're studying the Gemara. This is not the final halacha. You do always need to wait till the end to even begin to figure out, what the final halacha is. The reason you got to wait till the end is because a lot of things change in the next page, and there's always different opinions, and sometimes things are not mentioned all in the same place. There's a statement that says Torah is aniyim b'makom echad, in ashirim b'makom acher. Torah is poor in one place and rich in another place. And what that means is that sometimes the Torah leaves out an important point on this page, but it's rich in somewhere else where it actually mentions what's important for you to know in order to be able to get clarity on this place. You need to know that other place. So with Torah is very often it'll leave out something. So you really can't get the final halacha. We're learning this for Hashem. We're learning His Torah, and we're definitely picking up tidbits of information and trying to strengthen our davening and our fulfillment of mitzvahs. But we can't take the final halacha from just because we see this opinion. So that's one thing that you're mentioning. And the second thing that you're bringing up is this idea of the fact that what is the how does it work with kavana, thought, versus recital? Like, how important is recital in Jewish law? And generally, every mitzvah that has to do with a bracha, or there is a need to actually say it. Anything that has to do with recital, very rarely, in fact, for actual thinking divrei Torah, there's definitely part of the mitzvah of studying Torah that you're not getting if you're only thinking about the Torah. So therefore, generally we always, all mitzvahs generally have to be recited. To what extent? How much do you have to hear it? Do you have to be able to hear yourself or just say the words? We are going to be talking a little more about that later on, so I'm not going to get into that now, but I think those are 2 points that have to be emphasized. So thank you for bringing those up. Did you wanted to say something else, I think?
Just one other thing, if people will indulge me. When our martyrs died, the last words on their lips were the Shema. Okay? When I enter a life-threatening experience, perceivably real or esoteric, I say it. For example, every time the plane takes off, I say the Shema, all right? Now, does that mean I'm trivializing it? Or what's the appropriateness of doing that and its significance? Because that, to me, it's comfort, okay? Because I don't know what's going to happen, and I want to be protected, or I just want to reach out to Hashem. So that's sort of my own personal predicament. I don't know what others do, but in the face of perceived disaster or death, I'd rather cover my bases. So anyways.
Robert, you're doing the right thing.
Okay.
It's perfect to dive into Hashem in your time of need. That is the right thing to do.
Thank you.
So well done. Okay, Yehuda had a question, I think. Yehuda, did you have your hand up before? I can't hear you. You're still muted.
Okay.
In the art scroll, the Shema, the dalet is larger.
In the actual Torah, the dalet, and in the tefillin, in the mezuzah, the dalet is larger. That's right.
No, in the art scroll siddur.
Siddur. Okay, interesting. Is the ayin? Is the ayin larger also?
Yeah.
Right. And the reason for that, does it explain the reason in the siddur?
Yes. Because that spells ad, which means witness.
Aid. And
Aid.
right. And what does that mean, witness? That we are testifying?
I'm gonna look it up.
Okay, good.
Is he talking about the Siddur?
In the
Can
Siddur,
Can I say something?
It's a larger letter than the other letters?
well,
Yes.
in his Siddur, not necessarily do all Siddurim have it that way, but in his Siddur, it spells it out the way it's spelled out in the Torah. It not spells it out. It
Letters larger.
artistically writes it more artistically, the way it's similar to the Torah.
It I can't say the word, but signifies the importance by it being larger, I guess, right? It's
But doesn't mean you're supposed to say it larger. I mean,
No.
more pronounced,
No, it
does
doesn't
it?
change any. It doesn't change the pronunciation.
but it's the visual impact, I guess, right?
Okay.
Doesn't change that.
All right. The enlarged ayin and dalet.
Rabbi,
Just 1 second, Ben. Yehuda's reading. Yehuda, yeah, read it, please.
The enlarged ayin and dalet. In Torah scrolls, the letters ayin of Shema and dalet of Echad are enlarged. Together they form the word aid, witness, alluding to the thought that every Jew, by pronouncing the Shema, bears witness to Hashem's unity and declares it to all the world. Rokeach Kalbo Abodheim.
Okay, so thank you, Yehuda, for bringing that up. That the letter ayin and dalet in the Shema are enlarged in the writings when it's written down. And the reason why it's enlarged is emphasizing the fact that we are bearing testimony. We are giving testimony that Hashem is one and he's above the heavens and the earth. Now that's actually what we're having in mind when we say the Shema, but the only addition that Yehuda says, we are not just saying it, we are testifying it. So I think that's a nice addition, Yehuda, that you added to what we were. In other words,
I'm just quoting Art Scroll.
no, but it's good you brought it up. That's what it is. None of us are really coming up with our own insights. We're finding good stuff. That's what it's all about.
I interrupt you, Rabbi.
Finding good stuff. If it's about this, otherwise Ben's had his hand up for a while. Is it specifically
Okay.
about this? Or?
I'll wait. I can wait.
You wait? Okay. Ben, you wanted to say something. Yes.
yeah, I want to say, first of all, the Siddur of Chabad, Tilat Adonai, has the same thing, enlarged Ayin and Dalet. As to David's question, I think the Shema, we are talking to the world at large, or to our brethren, and God is talking to us and telling us what we should and should not do. And I think you should let God talk first. And we, in the Shema Esrei, we are asking for ourselves or for others, we are asking God to do things. So we should go last. But
I like that, Ben. I like that, Ben.
okay, thank you. There was one more thing, but now I forgot it.
If it comes to your mind, you'll interrupt us. We'll let you
Okay,
in.
thank you.
Okay, Susan.
Okay, I just want to mention something. In the Siddur I have, it says the Shema should be recited with intense concentration, especially the first two verses in which we accept the sovereignty of God. Recite the first verse aloud with your right hand covering your eyes.
That's
Why?
right. We're about to read that in the Gemara.
Oh,
Yeah, the first
Okay.
verse is
Okay.
the Shema.
You'll enjoy that.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I remember now, Rabbi,
Yeah, Ben.
I wanted to say that the Shema we're supposed to say twice a day.
Mhm.
But when I am like in a stress situation or something, I say Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Ro'i Lo Echsar. And it always brings up my mood. So.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, so let's continue.
Rabbi,
oh yeah.
I just had an idea regarding what Yehuda was saying.
Yeah.
I don't know if most people are probably not aware. There's something in Judaism that's gematria. I don't know if you can explain it a little bit more. And mispar katan, that if you add the hundreds and the tens and the ones and add them until you get one number. So when you aid, which is ayin, the enlarged ayin, and the enlarged daled, the ayin from the Shema and the daled from Echad spells the word aid, which means a witness. If you add them together, ayin is 70, daled is 4, 74, 7 plus 4 is 11. 11 is 1 plus 1, because again, you're adding the tens column in to get one number, and the number that you're getting from all of that 74 is 1.
No.
The number is just 1, which signifies the oneness of Hashem. Does that sound right?
No,
I don't know. Did you ever see that, or did you see that somewhere? No,
that's not correct. 7 plus 4 is 11. 11 is 1 plus 1, which is 2. It's not 1.
You are right. This is what happens when you have a stroke. I can't even add right. It sounded good. It sounded good.
Rabbi.
Okay. Yes.
Ayin Dalet is also odd. So odd means until you find something better, say the Shema.
Okay, we got a lot of interesting insights coming up over here.
Better than the Shema.
Everyone's becoming a scholar. Okay. Okay, we're going to continue.
I guess my brain was thinking 1 plus 1 equals a super 1.
Okay.
One twice.
We're going to continue with the next Gemara here. Amar Rav Nasan bar Mar Ukva. Amar Rav Yehuda. So we are, again, page Yud Gimel Amud Beis 13b, and we are, must be about 20 lines up from the bottom of the page. Amar Rav Nasan, the son of Mar Ukva, said, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, Al levavecha bi'amida. When you say Al levavecha, you should be, literally this means standing, but it doesn't mean standing, it means staying in one place. So the Gemara asks, Al levavecha salta daitoch? Do you really have to stay in one place when you say the words on your heart? Just those words? So the Gemara answers, Ela ema ad al levavecha bi'amida. Rather say you have to change the statement. It doesn't mean just those words, but it means until al levavecha, you should stay in one place. Mikan va'elech loy. From there and onward, you don't have to stand in one place. Now, part of learning Gemara is figuring out how to reconcile contradictions. And one of the contradictions that comes to mind here is the fact that we had a Mishnah that said you could say Shema while you are doing whatever you're doing. If we remember on page Yud Aleph, so we had over there, Beis Hillel says, Oim din v'koirin, yoishvin v'koirin, matin v'koirin, holchen baderach v'koirin. So after the Mishnah said that Beis Hillel says you could do it however you are, when you're lying, when you're standing, when you're So the Gemara explained it to mean, based on a brisa that Beis Hillel says, you could be standing, you could be sitting, you could be going, you could be leaning, you could be going. Holchen baderech v'karin. So how does that fit with what we're reading here? That we know we follow Beis Hillel, and here it seems surprising that Rav Nassan bar Mar Ukva, in the name of Rav Yehuda, they say that now you can't walk. You got to stand in one place. He said before
Aren't
that
you talking about when you're in temple?
So you want to say that there's a difference between if you're in shul or if you're at home?
Or if you're by yourself.
Uh-huh. But do you have a source? Is there any hint to that somewhere in the statements?
I have no idea. I'm just, it sounds to me like when you're, like, I remember they used to bring the Torah out down and we would be singing the Shema and the guys walking with the Torah. And and the men are taking the talus and touching.
Well,
and the
generally, that's a good point, Susan. The only thing is, generally, they would say the Shema, and then afterwards, it would be walked around the shul afterwards, not during the actual recital.
For some reason, that's what they did in this. It was a conservative temple. I don't know.
And they would walk around while saying
yes.
Shema. Interesting. Okay. Well, the only thing is we would need to figure out a source in the Gemara why where that would imply that. And we don't have that. So, but it's an interesting answer. But the question also would be, why should it make a difference if you're in shul or you're at home? So we would need to. So again, you have an interesting thought of how to reconcile this, but we would need more of a proof. Yeah, right. And an explanation why it should make a difference. Rashi asked this question.
Rabbi, maybe Susan's talking about during Kriya Shema, not during Kriya Shema, but during the reading of the Torah. They're saying Shema, Yisrael. That's different than the Kriya Shema.
They bring it down from the.
Well, even so, normally you don't walk around during that Shema. It's normally afterwards. Right. But in any event, Rashi asked this question. And Rashi says that even to Beis Hillel that says before that you could be reciting the Shema and going on your way, Mahalchin, they agree that you do have to stand until this verse, meaning that for that the recital of the Shema, that could be however you say it, there is a certain portion that does have to have extra concentration, so to speak. It needs to be, you need to, or it has to look like you have more concentration. And therefore, until al levavecha, you would need to stand, you would need to stay in one place. Now, the other contradiction to this Gemara is the question of how do we fit this with the previous Gemara, where we said the final halacha follows Rava, who says that the halacha is like Reb Meir, that all you need is kavana for the first sentence of the Shema. And here we are saying you need to have kavana until al levavecha, which sounds like you need a few sentences with kavana. So that's another contradiction. Again, part of learning Gemara is you enter into a realm where there's numerous contradictions, and we got to reconcile and figure out how to fit them with the other things that we've learned. And I must say that's why some people don't enjoy the Gemara, because it's you got to really go over it a few times, and you have to. In Yiddish, the term is halt cup. You have to hold halt cup. You have to be able to,
zig and zag, back and forth.
and not get confused. That's what halt cup means, not get confused. So the previous Gemara, we did mention an opinion that said ad kan mitzvahs kavana. So if on the bottom of page 13a, can all of you hear a beeping sound? Is that bothering you?
No,
I don't hear one.
You don't hear it?
No.
Okay, fine. Okay, good. Okay. So at the bottom of 13a, we said brisa, Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis learned, and we brought a brisa there. It said al levavecha, that hadvarim al levavecha. You would think you need the whole paragraph kavana, but it teaches us ha'ela that only until here you need kavana, which means until al levavecha, Rashi says, and afterwards you don't need kavana. So the possibility of explaining our Gemara here, where that says that you should stay in one place until Aleph Avecha, might be a connection with that opinion in that Gemara, where it was the words of Rabbi Eliezer, that brisa, that all you need to have kavana for is until al levavecha. And so this would fit maybe with that. That would be one way of understanding this Gemara. In other words, where is this coming from? Where we're saying until al levavecha you should stand in one place. You could say that fits hand in hand with the other opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, and who argued on Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said you need to understand the whole first paragraph, and that the whole paragraph needs kavana, and the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer maybe flows with this opinion. That's one way of understanding this. Another way of understanding it, according to that, what comes out is we don't follow this Gemara. We don't paskin this way. We hold that only the first sentence, or which possibly includes Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusa L'Olam Vayed. Possibly it includes that second sentence that's not written in the Torah. It possibly is included, but only that sentence of Shema is what you would need to have kavana for. That's what we said is the final halacha, where you really need to, concentrate on Hashem. That would mean that it's only the first sentence, which would mean that first sentence is what you really should stop and not move. Even though the Gemara here says you should stand in one place, you shouldn't be moving. It doesn't mean stand in one place. You could sit in one place, but you shouldn't be moving for the until Aleph Avecha. We won't hold that way. We would hold it's only the first sentence. Now, as the Gemara here says, until Aleph Avecha, which is the first 2-3 sentences. But we don't hold that, because we hold it's only the first sentence, Yikavana, but we could take the law that they say and apply it to our halacha. We apply the law that you can't be moving when you're saying the most important part of the Shema. You shouldn't be moving. So that applies to what we would say would be the first sentence of the Shema. So that's one way of understanding it. And that would be the halacha outcome of the way we're reconciling this contradiction. The other way of reconciling this contradiction is to say that they're two separate things. There is an obligation to have kavana for the first sentence, but there's also an obligation until Aleph Avecha that you should appear to be, so to speak, concentrating on Hashem. And according to that, if you follow that way of thinking, and I believe it's the Rosh brings this opinion, and the Rabbeinu Yoina, they bring this way of reconciling the contradiction, and therefore both could be the final halacha. The first sentence you need to have kavana for, and the fact that you shouldn't move around is until al levavecha. But the truth is, this is discussed a little later in the Gemara. So maybe here, I see he brings it down here. But anyway, so that's another way of explaining it, that it's not really a contradiction, and there's a different reason. There's a different reason for this, which has to do with the not exactly your kavana, but with how it presents, how it's presented, your acceptance of your recital of the Shema, that at least until al levavecha you should stand in one place. You should stay in one place. Now, I will also mention that this leads to another question in halacha. How does this apply if you're driving in a car? If you're sitting in the back seat of a car or in a bus that's driving, would that be a problem because you are moving?
Mm-hmm.
Or does it have to be where you need to concentrate on your walking, and when you're sitting in the back of a bus or in the back of the car, it doesn't take away your concentration at all just because the car is moving, but that you don't really need concentration for. So I saw it brought down that it shouldn't be a problem if you're in a car to if someone's driving, that you wouldn't need to stay in one place. The Shulchan Aruch brings down that if you're going on your way, you want to say Shema, you should stop for the first pasuk, which means that the Shulchan Aruch learns the first way I was explaining it, and it says when you're riding on an animal, there are different opinions between the later person who's sitting in a wagon or a boat. You don't have to stop because you can have good intention. So a wagon and a boat, which nowadays would mean a car, it would seem that's not a problem. Riding on an animal is another story. There's different opinions. Good to be machmer. This is from the Mission of Brewer on chapter 63 of the Code of Law. So it's just interesting. We're seeing the sources of these halachas here. Let's continue.
Rabbi,
back to the Gemara. Yes.
I was thinking the same thing, but like, what if you're the driver as opposed to the passenger, and this wagon, which was more controllable because of its speed, is now a car going 60 miles an hour on the highway? I've had several times where the driver, and all of a sudden I realized, it's almost Sof Zaman Kriya Shema, and I got to say Shema, but how do I put my hands over my eyes and watch the traffic at the same time without hurting myself or anybody else?
So I don't think if you're driving, if you have any exemption to drive, you have to stop.
Right.
I think this only applies to sitting in the back seat, and it wouldn't apply if you're actually the driver, because then you're just like walking.
Concentrate.
Then you're just like walking. You would be obligated to stop.
Excuse me, Rabbi, if you were the driver, you wouldn't be able to concentrate.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to be on the road if you're doing your Shema while you're driving. So just give me a little advance notice if you're ever planning on doing that. But I don't think there would be any leniency for that. That's not the reason. It doesn't fit with the logic. The whole logic is that you can concentrate, and there you can't concentrate.
God doesn't want us to be put in danger.
So you got to
It's like riding an animal.
Yeah, or worse. Yeah, you got you would need to pull over and stop in order to say the Shema, and if you can't stop, then and you have no choice, and the time of Shema is coming, and it's impossible for you to pull over, then do not cover your eyes. You could say the Shema, but don't cover your eyes. It's my halachic. not being a Pesach, I feel confident that it's okay. All right.
This is so interesting. This discussion that we have every day is so interesting.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Okay,
Great.
we're going to continue on the Gemara. So we just mentioned that you have to recite even the beginning of the V'yahavta until Aleph Avecha. You have to recite in staying in one place, Ba'amida. And Mikan Va'elach, but from there on, you don't have to. You could continue going. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan says, Kol haparsha kula ba'amida. Rabbi Yochanan says the entire portion should be recited while you're standing in one place. And that first paragraph. And that fits with Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. Rabbi Yochanan Taimei, Rabbi Yochanan, this fits with Rabbi Yochanan according to his reason. That Reb Damar Rabba Bar Bar Chanan, Rabbi Yochanan, that Rabba Bar Bar Chanan said the name of Rabbi Yochanan, halacha ke Reb Acha, the halacha follows Reb Acha, Sha'amar Mishum Reb Yehuda, that he said the name of Reb Yehuda, that a person who says Shema has to have kavana, the whole first paragraph. So that would fit with what we learned earlier. The entire paragraph of the Shema, the first paragraph, you would need to have kavana, and that was earlier on this page where we learned that. Perek Rishon, it said, but Perek, since you have kavana, but Perek Rishon, then Shuvein Eitzarech, you don't have to have kavana more than that. So in other words, Rabbi Yochanan held earlier that you need kavana for the whole first paragraph. He would follow that logic when it comes to walking, that you wouldn't be allowed to walk somewhere while you're saying the Shema, while you're saying while you're saying the first paragraph of the Shema. Now, Tosfos mentions that that we're not talking about if you would have to repeat Shemona Esrei. Tosfos here says we're talking a mitzvah min hamuvchar. It's a proper way of saying the Shema is to stop for the first few sentences, to stand and not go, which would come out that if you did it wrong, if you traveled and said Shema while you were traveling, while you were walking, you would not need to repeat it.
No.
So that would be a interesting outcome of this halacha. I believe the Pri Megadim also says that in Shulchan Aruch. They bring down that if you did go while you were walking, you would not have to repeat the Shemona Esrei. But the Yeved, he brings down Mr. Brewer brings down that if you did read it while you were going, you wouldn't have to repeat the Shemona Esrei. Brings it from the Pri Megadim, which I think the source is from this Tosfos. He says it's a mitzvah min hamuvchar. It is a proper way to do the mitzvah is to stop and not go. And the halacha would only be applicable for the first verse. Okay. Now, once you get to V'yahavta, you could go on your way. Okay, now, it's 11 o'clock. Okay, so that concludes our discussion. Anyone has any questions?